Hi, my name is Dr. Juliet Skinner, and I'm the Medical Director of Barbados Fertility Centre, which is an IVF unit located on the island of Barbados in the Caribbean. Ultimately, I guess our story is an interesting one in terms of that without medical tourism, this unit would not exist. Barbados is an island of about a population of 250,000, and to justify an IVF unit and the cost structure that comes with that ultimately requires somewhere between 500,000 and 750,000 population. So when we set the unit up, we set it up with a view that it was going to attract patients from not only within the shores of Barbados. And ultimately, today, 85% of our patients actually travel to us for their health care. And interestingly, why is medical tourism important to us? Because otherwise, as a Barbadian, you would not have the option of having an IVF unit on your doorstep. For us, we have certainly seen within our own centre about a 50% growth per annum from the initial setup phase. We opened initially in 2002, really more as a setup. By the end of 2002 we opened, and if we look at our numbers of patients being treated from 2003 through to 2008, it has been somewhere between a 33 and a 50% growth per annum. Yeah, I think the reasons why they'll choose our centre will differ. I mean, I think an IVF patient is a little bit different than your mainstream medical tourists. A lot of mainstream medical tourists, their number one drive is probably cost. That starts that ball rolling. And I think perhaps in IVF that may be why they open that door as well. But an IVF patient, the biggest thing that matters to them is their chance of success. Because at the end of the day, the goal of this is they want to have a baby. And that will drive their decision process. Ultimately, in terms of where our patients come from, I mean, certainly we have many patients coming from within the Caribbean as a region, which is many, many islands. But the two next biggest places that patients travel from would be the UK and the USA. Now, what makes them travel differs between the two countries. The UK, they will travel because of success rates. Our success rates are considerably higher than their national success rates. We're not bound by regulation, which means that they can have the option of things like donor eggs with anonymity, which the UK has just removed anonymity on egg donors and sperm donors. The American medical tourist is different. Their drive will often be, location as well as then basically cost and success. Our success rates are comparable, if not better, than many of the national units here, but at the same point in time, our cost is considerably less. Also, for many Americans, it is a case that, yes, they need some time off around the process anyway. And at the end of the day, ultimately, for them, holidays are limited. And, if they need to be away, then they can certainly marry the two things, which is their IVF treatment as well as to have a break as well. Absolutely. I think the medical tourism really just has revolutionised healthcare in many respects. It means that small countries can now offer care on all sorts of different categories. And at the end of the day, that can only improve the quality of local healthcare. In addition, it means that people who perhaps were from small countries and have gone and trained away, for example, like myself, I'm actually Barbadian, but I trained in Ireland and ultimately returned to Barbados with the skill set that I have. Ultimately, I may not have otherwise been able to return, and this concern about the brain drain for smaller countries of losing actually many of their specialists within fields is therefore prevented. In terms of actually, I think what it does for patients is it makes the world a smaller place. Tourism market is now, it's so easy to travel, and ultimately then they basically now the idea that you're going to travel for your health care just means that you have so many more choices. You aren't limited to the dock down at the end of the village. That might have been the case in 50 years ago. Yeah, it certainly looks very impressive. I mean, looking through, certainly there's quite a wide range of people here, from speakers that are actually in the healthcare sort of side to hospital managers. When you look at things like Apollo and some of the larger hospitals from Asia that are doing this, to then the facilitators in between, who basically run the tourism companies and try to link the patients and the centres together, to even companies which just have their HR manager and literally just here to sort of seek and see, look, what are the options for their employees. So it's a huge range of people that are here, and I think that it makes for a very exciting few days ahead. Yeah, I think that at the end, ultimately, you need a central body to be able to bring people together, and ultimately, until you go to something like this, you don't always know what is everyone else doing. And perhaps, yes, I mean, in the world of internet, people find other people, and facilitators end up contacting us, etc. But I mean, it really brings the minds together. And I think at the end, ultimately, that means that at the end of the Medical Tourism Association is ultimately playing a pivotal role in progression of medical tourism. Okay, the importance of having an organisation like the Medical Tourism Organisation is really to be that pivotal role and to bring people together. But also, to a degree, it will allow a means of where they can be sensible sort of advertising, sensible, basically, you know, a place that you can certainly put your clinic and your centre at a forefront. And ultimately, you know, using things like JCI accreditation, etc., all of that then marries into this. So Barbados Fertility Centre ultimately was a IVF unit set up with the vision of saying, yes, science has made so many breakthroughs, but there must be more to this than just that. And the vision was, yes, to create a centre in an island of Barbados, but the vision was also to say, well, are we missing something in big countries? Are we missing things like, what is the role of stress on the likely success rates for IVF? Obviously, when someone is tearing around a city trying to get to appointments and have their ultrasound scan and have their egg retrievals, you know, that is a whole different experience. And perhaps when they're away from the rat race and they're sitting on the beach in Barbados and they're coming in for their IVF appointments as scheduled, you know, the driver picks them up, they arrive at the clinic, they have the ultrasound, they go back to the hotel, great, we'll see you in 2 days. And most patients certainly remark on it, and certainly any patient that's had a treatment cycle in a country at home in the perils of life, and then comes and has a treatment at our centre, ultimately will never go back to having treatment in their own centre because the impact of stress is phenomenal. Certainly for us, I mean, that was actually one of the important things of actually creating the unit and saying, look, this will make a difference, and it does make a difference. It doesn't mean that every single person needs to have stress reduction at the time of their IVF. No, of course it doesn't. But at the end of the day, ultimately, stress is never helpful. And we have a nutshell programme where they can also encompass acupuncture and reflexology in amongst their IVF. But equally, we have found that we don't want to make that a mandatory answer because not everyone wants to perhaps pursue that line. And ultimately, they don't, you know, it's their choice as to what they want. The focus of it is obviously their key medical care. And for us, our centre set up a centre that we wanted to be absolutely cutting-edge technology, latest of everything, the best equipment, and, you know, that's what we have.